The Wyoming sun beat down mercilessly on the high plains as Jake Suvan guided his prize Angus bull, Red River, back toward the home pasture. At 45, Jake had spent most of his adult life working cattle on the Double S Ranch, 3,000 acres of rolling grassland nestled against the Wind River Mountains. The work was hard, the pay modest, but it was the only life he'd ever wanted. Red River had been Jake's constant companion for 6 years, ever since Jake's wife Maria had surprised him with the young bull for his birthday. "Every cowboy needs a special animal," she'd said with that smile that could light up the darkest Wyoming winter. "This one's got heart, just like you." Maria had been gone for 2 years now. Cancer had taken her despite every prayer Jake could muster and every dollar he could scrape together for treatments. Red River had become more than livestock. He was family, the last living connection to the woman who'd made Jake's life complete. The massive bull weighed nearly 2,200 pounds, but he moved with surprising grace across the rough terrain, his black coat gleaming in the afternoon light. Red River was intelligent in the way that working animals sometimes were, seeming to understand Jake's moods and responding to verbal commands like a well-trained horse. "Come on, big fella," Jake called, adjusting his position in the saddle as his mare, Dusty, picked her way across a rocky outcrop. "Let's get you back to the shade before this heat gets any worse." They were crossing through Willow Creek Canyon, a natural corridor that connected the summer grazing lands to the ranch proper. The creek had been reduced to a trickle by the August drought, but the cottonwoods still provided patches of blessed shade in the otherwise sun-scorched landscape. Jake was thinking about the upcoming cattle sale, mentally calculating how much Red River's offspring would bring at market, when the bull suddenly stopped and began backing away from a cluster of rocks near the creek bed. "What is it, boy?" Jake asked, reining in Dusty to study Red River's behavior. The bull was snorting and pawing the ground, his massive head swinging back and forth as if trying to identify a threat. Then Jake heard it, the dry, papery sound that made every rancher's blood run cold. The distinctive rattle of a western diamondback, probably a big one judging by the volume and intensity of the warning. "Easy, Red," Jake said, his voice calm but urgent. "Back away slow, buddy, just back away." But Red River, despite his intelligence, was still a bull. The reptile's aggressive rattling triggered something primal in the massive animal. Instead of retreating, Red River snorted challenge and took a step toward the rocks. "No, boy, get back!" Jake shouted, swinging down from Dusty's saddle. The snake struck with lightning speed, emerging from the rocks like a coiled spring released. Jake caught a glimpse of diamond-patterned scales and wicked fangs before the serpent's head connected with Red River's front leg, just above the knee joint. Red River bellowed in pain and confusion, rearing back on his hind legs before crashing down heavily. The rattlesnake, easily 6 feet long and as thick as Jake's wrist, slithered away into the rocks with the satisfied air of a predator that had successfully defended its territory. "Red! Easy, boy!" Jake rushed to the bull's side, his hands already reaching for the cell phone in his shirt pocket. The nearest veterinarian was Dr. Sarah Chen in Riverton, 45 minutes away if she could drop everything and come immediately. Red River was down on his side now, his breathing labored, foam beginning to gather at the corners of his mouth. Jake could see the puncture wounds on the bull's leg, already beginning to swell with the venom that was spreading through Red River's massive circulatory system. "Come on, buddy, stay with me," Jake whispered, his voice breaking as he knelt beside the suffering animal. Red River's dark eyes found Jake's face, still trusting, still looking to his human for help and comfort. Jake's hands shook as he dialed Dr. Chen's number, knowing that even if she could come immediately, it might already be too late. Rattlesnake venom worked fast in large animals, and Red River was showing all the signs of severe envenomation, rapid breathing, excessive salivation, and the beginning stages of shock. As the phone rang in his ear, Jake placed his hand on Red River's neck, feeling the strong heartbeat that was already beginning to slow. He thought about Maria, about the day she'd brought this bull home, about all the mornings he'd shared coffee on the porch while watching Red River graze in the home pasture. "Please, God," Jake whispered, tears mixing with the dust on his weathered cheeks. "Don't take him too. I can't lose him too." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to enjoy many more exciting stories. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through Jake's phone with professional urgency. "Jake, I'm grabbing my emergency kit now. How long since the bite? Maybe 10 minutes, Jake replied, his hand still resting on Red River's neck, feeling the bull's labored breathing. Big Diamondback got him on the front leg above the knee. He's down, Sarah. He's really down. I'm 20 minutes out if I push it hard, Dr. Chen said, and Jake could hear her truck engine roaring to life in the background. Keep him calm. Don't let him thrash around. The more he moves, the faster the venom spreads. Red River's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The massive bull's breathing had become shallow and irregular, and the swelling around the bite site was spreading up his leg like a slow-moving tide. Jake had seen cattle die from snake bites before. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't quick. Come on, buddy, Jake murmured, stroking Red River's flank. Sarah's coming. Just hold on for me. The bull's eyes were beginning to glaze over, but he still responded to Jake's voice with a weak rumble deep in his chest. That simple sound nearly broke Jake's heart. Even dying, Red River was trying to communicate, trying to maintain the bond that had sustained them both through the hardest years of Jake's life. Jake's phone buzzed with an incoming text from his neighbor, Tom Broken Eagle, who ran the adjacent property. Saw Dr. Chen's truck flying down County Road 47. Everything okay? Tom was a good neighbor, a Shoshone elder in his 70s whose family had worked this land for generations before it was divided into ranches. Jake typed back quickly, Red River snakebite, bad one. The response came immediately. On my way. Jake appreciated the support, but he knew there wasn't much anyone could do now except wait for Dr. Chen and pray that modern veterinary medicine could work a miracle. He'd heard of cattle surviving rattlesnake bites, but usually smaller animals, and usually when treatment came within the first few minutes after envenomation. 15 minutes later, Jake heard the sound of two vehicles approaching at high speed. Dr. Chen's white veterinary truck appeared first, trailing a cloud of dust as it navigated the rough creekside trail. Behind her came Tom's battered Ford pickup, carrying the old rancher and what looked like a small passenger. Doctor? Chen was out of her truck before the engine stopped running, her medical kit already in hand. She was a compact woman in her early 40s, originally from California, but Wyoming tough after 8 years of treating ranch animals in some of the most remote country in the lower 48. How's he doing? She asked, kneeling beside Red River and immediately checking the bull's vital signs. Getting worse, Jake said, stepping back to give her room to work. Breathing's getting shallow and look at the swelling. Dr. Chen examined the bite site, her expression grim. The puncture wounds were clearly visible, surrounded by tissue that had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. Red River's leg looked like a grotesquely inflated balloon, and the discoloration was spreading upward toward his shoulder. This is severe envenomation, Dr. Chen said, preparing a syringe with anti-venom. I'll do everything I can, Jake, but I have to be honest. In an animal this size with this much venom and this much time elapsed, the odds aren't good. She administered the anti-venom injection, followed by steroids to combat shock and inflammation. But even as she worked, Jake could see the doubt in her eyes. Red River's breathing was becoming more labored, and his massive frame was beginning to shudder with the effort of fighting off the venom's effects. Tom Broken Eagle approached quietly, his weathered face reflecting years of experience with both triumph and tragedy on the high plains. Beside him walked a small girl, maybe 8 years old, with long black hair braided with colored beads and intelligent dark eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. This is my granddaughter, Lily, Tom said softly. She wanted to come see if she could help. Jake managed a weak smile for the child, but his attention remained focused on Red River. That's kind of you, honey, but this is pretty serious stuff. Dr. Chen is doing everything possible. Lily approached the dying bull without fear, her small hand reaching out to touch Red River's massive head. Grandpa Tom taught me about plant medicine, she said in a clear, confident voice that seemed strange coming from someone so young. I know something that might help your bull. Dr. Chen looked up from her medical kit with professional skepticism. Lily, I appreciate wanting to help, but rattlesnake envenomation is extremely serious. We need proven medical treatments. The old ways work too, Lily said simply, her hand still resting on Red River's head. The bull's eyes seemed to focus on her face with what looked almost like recognition. My great-great-grandmother was a medicine woman. She taught my grandpa, and he taught me. I have a cure for snake poison." Jake felt a desperate hope flicker in his chest, even as his rational mind rejected the idea of trusting his bull's life to folk remedies and an 8-year-old child. But Red River was dying. Dr. Chen's modern medicine might not be enough, and Jake was running out of options. "What kind of cure?" Jake asked, surprising himself with the seriousness in his voice. Lily looked up at him with those ancient eyes. "Plants that grow by the creek. They pull the poison out if you know how to use them right. But we have to hurry. Once the poison reaches his heart, even the old medicine can't help." Jake looked between Dr. Chen's worried face and Lily's confident expression, his mind racing through impossible choices. Red River's breathing had become even more labored in the past few minutes, and the bull's massive frame shuddered with each breath. Modern medicine was failing, but trusting an 8-year-old's folk remedies seemed like desperation masquerading as hope. "Jake," Dr. Chen said quietly, checking Red River's pulse, "his heart rate is becoming irregular. The venom is affecting his cardiovascular system. I can give him more supportive care, but honestly..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Jake could see it in her eyes, hear it in the careful professional tone she used when delivering bad news to ranch families. Red River was dying, and there wasn't much more that modern veterinary science could do. Tom Broken Eagle stepped closer, his weathered hand resting on his granddaughter's shoulder. "Jake, I've known Lily since she was born. She's got the gift, just like her great-great-grandmother did. The old ones knew things about healing that got forgotten when everyone started depending on pills and needles." "Tom, I respect your traditions," Dr. Chen interjected, "but rattlesnake venom is a complex mixture of enzymes and toxins. It requires specific antivenoms to neutralize." "And what if your antivenoms aren't working?" Lily asked, looking directly at the veterinarian with surprising directness. "Your bull is still dying, isn't he?" The simple truth of the child's words hung in the air like smoke from a branding fire. Red River was indeed still dying, despite the best that modern medicine could offer. Jake knelt beside his bull, feeling the animal's labored breathing, seeing the fear and confusion in those familiar dark eyes. "What would you need to do?" Jake asked Lily, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's purple coneflower growing by the creek bend and wild plantain near the cottonwoods," Lily said, already scanning the area with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to read the land for medicinal plants. "Also need some willow bark and sweet grass if we can find it." Dr. Chen shook her head. "Jake, I understand you're desperate, but we're talking about your prize bull's life here. These plants haven't been tested for rattlesnake envenomation. We don't know dosages, we don't know interactions." "We know they're dying anyway," Tom said softly. "Sometimes the old ways work when the new ways can't. My grandmother treated snake bites for 60 years using these same plants, saved more lives than she lost." Jake studied Red River's face, seeing the trust that still remained in the bull's eyes despite the pain and confusion. This animal had been Maria's gift to him, had been his companion through the darkest period of his life. Red River deserved every chance, even if that chance came from an unlikely source. "How long would it take?" Jake asked Lily. 20 minutes to gather the plants, maybe 10 more to prepare the medicine," she replied. "But we need to start now. The poison is moving toward his heart." Dr. Chen stepped closer to Jake. "I can't recommend this, Jake. As a veterinarian, I have to advise you that unproven remedies could make things worse or waste precious time." "Time for what?" Jake interrupted, his voice cracking with emotion. "You said yourself the odds aren't good. If Red River's going to die anyway, what's the harm in trying something different?" Tom nodded approvingly. "The plants won't hurt him, Jake. Worst case, they don't help. But Lily's seen me treat animals with snake bites before. She knows what she's doing." Dr. Chen looked at Red River's deteriorating condition, then back at Jake's desperate face. "If you're going to do this, do it fast, and I'll stay here to monitor his vitals. If he crashes, we'll need to act immediately." Lily was already moving toward the creek, her small legs carrying her quickly over the rough ground. "Grandpa Tom, help me find the purple flowers. Jake, can you get some of that willow bark from the big tree over there?" Jake hesitated for just a moment, looking down at Red River one more time. The bull's breathing was getting shallower, his eyes losing focus. Conventional wisdom said to trust the veterinarian's training and experience, But conventional wisdom wasn't saving Red River's life. "Tell me what to look for," Jake said, rising to his feet with new determination. As they spread out along the creek, searching for medicinal plants that had been used by indigenous peoples for centuries before the first European ever set foot in Wyoming, Jake found himself praying again. Not just for Red River's life, but for the wisdom to know whether he was making the right choice or simply prolonging his bull's suffering with false hope. Lily moved through the vegetation with surprising expertise, her small hands quickly identifying and gathering plants that Jake would have walked past without a second glance. She worked with the focused intensity of someone much older, clearly understanding that time was running out for the suffering animal back at the creek bank. "This one," she called to Jake, holding up a purple flower. "And we need the roots too. The medicine is in the roots." As Jake carefully dug up the plant with his pocket knife, he wondered if he was watching a miracle in the making or simply delaying the inevitable. But looking back at Red River's motionless form, he knew he had to try everything possible. The bull had been there for him during the worst period of his life. Now it was Jake's turn to be there for Red River, even if it meant trusting in 8-year-old hands and ancient wisdom that predated modern Wyoming by thousands of years. Within 15 minutes, Lily had gathered an impressive collection of medicinal plants along Willow Creek. Her small hands moved with surprising expertise as she identified purple coneflower with its distinctive dark roots, broad-leafed plantain growing in the moist soil near the water's edge, strips of willow bark carefully peeled from younger branches, and several stalks of sweet grass that thrived in the shadier areas beneath the cottonwoods. She worked with the focused efficiency of someone who'd been taught that proper preparation could mean the difference between life and death. Every movement was deliberate, every plant selection made with the confidence of inherited knowledge passed down through generations of Shoshone healers. Tom Broken Eagle produced a small stone bowl from his truck, along with what looked like a smooth river rock perfectly shaped for grinding. The implements showed their age in the way they fit together naturally, worn smooth by countless years of use. "My grandmother's mortar and pestle," he explained to Jake, his weathered fingers running over the stone's surface with reverence. "Been in our family for 5 generations, made from sacred stone found in the Medicine Bow Mountains." Dr. Chen knelt beside Red River, checking his pulse and respiratory rate with growing concern. Her professional composure couldn't hide the worry in her eyes as she monitored the bull's deteriorating condition. "His heart rate is becoming increasingly irregular," she reported grimly, her stethoscope moving across Red River's massive chest. "Blood pressure is dropping significantly. Whatever you're planning to do, you need to do it immediately. We're losing him." Lily began crushing the purple coneflower roots with practiced movements that seemed impossible for her age. Her small hands gripped the stone pestle with surprising strength as she worked the fibrous roots into smaller pieces, releasing their medicinal oils into the air. "The purple flower pulls poison out of blood," she explained matter-of-factly, adding pieces of willow bark to the mixture. Each addition was measured not with instruments but with an intuitive understanding that spoke of deep traditional knowledge. Willow stops pain and brings down swelling. Plantain heals wounds from inside out. Jake watched intently as she worked, mesmerized by the ancient ritual unfolding before his eyes. The mixture began to release an earthy, medicinal smell that reminded him of his own grandmother's old remedies, folk medicines he'd dismissed as superstition during his modern education. "And the sweet grass?" Jake asked, noting how carefully Lily handled the aromatic stalks. "Sweet grass carries our prayers to the spirits," Tom explained quietly, his voice taking on the reverent tone reserved for sacred matters. "It lets them know we're asking for help with good intentions, that we come to the healing with respect for all living things." Jake might have been skeptical of spiritual explanations just hours earlier, but watching Red River struggle for each breath had fundamentally changed his worldview. Modern science was failing his bull, and maybe there were other forces at work in the universe, other ways of healing that contemporary society had forgotten in its rush toward technological solutions. As Lily ground the plants into a coarse paste, she began humming a melody that sounded impossibly ancient, notes that seemed to echo across the Wyoming landscape like wind moving through sagebrush. The tune carried an otherworldly quality that spoke of campfires and star-filled nights stretching back centuries. Tom joined in softly, his weathered voice adding depth and harmony to the haunting melody. The song seemed to transform the creek bank into something sacred, a place where healing could occur through means that medical textbooks couldn't explain. "Is that singing important to the medicine?" Doctor Chen asked, clearly struggling to understand what she was witnessing through the lens of her scientific training. "Everything's connected," Lily replied without stopping her grinding work, her young voice carrying wisdom that seemed to come from somewhere far older than her 8 years. "Plants, animals, people, songs, spirits. The medicine works better when everything comes together with the right spirit, when we approach healing with respect for all the connections." She added creek water to the plant mixture, creating a thick, greenish paste that smelled both earthy and medicinal. Jake found himself thinking about stories his own grandmother had told about home remedies that could cure everything from childhood colds to serious cuts and infections. Maybe there had been more wisdom in those old ways than he'd given credit to during his pragmatic adult years. "Now we need to get this medicine into him," Lily announced, looking at Red River's massive, suffering form. "He has to swallow some to fight the poison from inside, but he also needs it applied directly to the bite wound to draw out the venom that's still there." Dr. Chen looked uncertain, her medical training warring with the desperate situation before them. His swallowing reflex may be severely compromised at this point. "If he aspirates this plant mixture into his lungs..." "He won't," Tom interrupted with quiet confidence born of decades spent observing animal behavior. "Animals instinctively know what they need when we offer healing with the right intentions. Red River will accept the medicine if it can help him." Jake knelt beside Red River's massive head, gently lifting the bull's jaw while supporting the animal's neck. Red River's eyes were glazed with pain and the effects of venom, but they still tracked Jake's movements with recognition. There was still intelligence there behind the suffering, still the trust that had defined their relationship for 6 years. "Come on, buddy," Jake murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "This little girl thinks she can help you. She's learned things that might save your life. Let's see if we can trust in something bigger than what we thought we knew." Lily approached without fear, her small hand reaching out to touch Red River's muzzle gently. The bull didn't flinch away from her touch, perhaps sensing something healing in her presence. She carefully placed some of the plant mixture on her fingers and rubbed it directly into Red River's gums, working the medicine into the tissue where it could be absorbed quickly into his bloodstream. The bull tolerated the treatment without resistance, seeming to understand intuitively that this strange-tasting medicine might be his salvation. Then Lily cupped a larger portion of the paste in her open palm and offered it to the suffering animal. To everyone's amazement, Red River extended his massive tongue and slowly, deliberately licked the plant mixture from Lily's small hand. His swallowing was labored but successful, and he actually seemed to lean slightly toward her afterward, as if asking for more of the healing medicine. "He knows," Tom observed with deep satisfaction, nodding as he watched the interaction between child and bull. "Animals always recognize when something is truly going to help them heal. They can sense the medicine's power in ways we've forgotten how to feel." Lily then applied a generous amount of the remaining paste directly to the swollen bite site on Red River's front leg, working it gently but thoroughly into the puncture wounds where the rattlesnake's fangs had delivered their deadly payload. The bull flinched slightly at the contact, but didn't pull away, his breathing seeming to slow and deepen as the plant medicine made contact with the venom injection site. "How long before we see results?" Jake asked, settling in beside Red River's head to provide comfort and monitoring during what could be the bull's final hours. "The old medicine works different than your modern treatments," Lily explained to Dr. Chen, her young face serious with the weight of inherited responsibility. "It doesn't fight the poison like a battle with chemicals. Instead, it helps the body remember how to push the poison out by itself, how to heal the way nature intended." They settled in to wait beneath the shade of the ancient cottonwoods as the late afternoon sun continued its relentless assault on the Wyoming landscape. Dr. Chen maintained her vigil over Red River's vital signs, while Tom and Lily sat quietly nearby, occasionally adding their voices to that haunting melody that seemed to drift across the creek like a prayer made audible, carrying their hopes across the vast landscape toward whatever powers might be listening. By dawn, Red River was standing. Jake had dozed fitfully through the night, waking every hour to check on his bull and help Lily administer more of the plant medicine. Each time he'd expected to find Red River worse, perhaps gone altogether. Instead, He'd watched in amazement as the massive animal's condition slowly, steadily improved. Dr. Chen had stayed through the night as well, monitoring vital signs and documenting what she was witnessing with the careful attention of a scientist observing something that challenged everything she thought she knew about veterinary medicine. "Heart rate is completely normal," she announced, stowing her stethoscope with a bewildered expression. "Blood pressure stable. The swelling around the bite site has reduced by at least 60%. I've never seen recovery this rapid from severe rattlesnake envenomation." Red River stood in the morning light, still favoring his injured leg but alert and responsive. When Jake approached with a bucket of fresh water, the bull drank deeply, his appetite clearly returning along with his strength. "The old medicine worked," Tom said with quiet satisfaction, watching his granddaughter pack up her remaining plant materials with the same careful attention she'd used in preparing them. Lily's great-great-grandmother would be proud. Jake knelt beside Lily, who was no bigger than Red River's head, but had somehow saved the massive animal's life. "How did you know it would work?" "Plants have been healing snake bites for thousands of years," she replied matter-of-factly. "People just forgot how to listen to them, but animals never forgot. That's why Red River accepted the medicine so easily." Dr. Chen approached Jake, her expression thoughtful. "I need to be honest with you, Jake. What I witnessed last night goes against everything I learned in veterinary school, but I can't argue with results. That bull should be dead, and instead he's standing here drinking water like nothing happened." "So what does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means maybe there's more than one way to heal," Dr. Chen said slowly. "And maybe some of those ways are older and wiser than what we learn in textbooks." Over the following weeks, word spread throughout the ranching community about Red River's miraculous recovery. Jake found himself fielding calls from neighbors who'd heard about the 8-year-old girl who could cure snake bites with creekside plants. Tom brought Lily to visit several more times, teaching Jake to identify the medicinal plants growing on his own property. "Every ranch should have someone who knows the old medicine," Tom explained. "The plants are free, they grow everywhere, and they don't require a veterinarian's visit that costs half a month's income." Jake started a journal, documenting which plants grew where on his property and noting Lily's instructions for their preparation and use. He also began reading everything he could find about traditional Native American medicine, discovering a rich heritage of plant-based healing that had sustained indigenous peoples for centuries before modern pharmaceuticals. 3 months after the snake bite, Jake sat on his porch watching Red River graze in the home pasture. The bull showed no lasting effects from his brush with death, moving with the same grace and strength he'd possessed before encountering the rattlesnake in Willow Creek Canyon. Dr. Chen had become a regular visitor as well, bringing medical journals and research papers about ethnobotany and traditional healing methods. She'd begun incorporating some plant-based treatments into her practice, always in conjunction with modern veterinary care. "You know what the most important thing was that night?" she asked during one visit, settling into the rocking chair that had once been Maria's favorite spot. "Lily's knowledge?" Jake guessed. "That you were willing to try something different when conventional medicine wasn't enough," Dr. Chen replied. "Too often we get so invested in one approach that we can't see alternatives, even when they're growing right beside us." Jake nodded, thinking about how many times in his life he'd been too stubborn or too proud to accept help from unexpected sources. The loss of Maria had taught him about grief, but Red River's recovery had taught him about hope, about the value of keeping an open mind when everything seemed hopeless. On the anniversary of Red River's snakebite, Jake organized a small celebration at the ranch. Tom and Lily came, along with Dr. Chen and several neighbors who'd heard the story. They gathered by Willow Creek, near the spot where Red River had nearly died, and where Jake had learned that healing could come from the smallest hands and the oldest wisdom. Lily, now 9 years old, had continued learning from her grandfather about traditional medicine. She'd helped treat 3 more snake-bitten animals in the past year, as well as various cuts, infections, and other ailments that responded well to plant-based remedies. "What's the most important thing about healing?" Jake asked her as they watched Red River wade into the creek for a drink. Lily considered the question seriously, her young face thoughtful. "Knowing that everything is connected. The plants, the animals, the people, the land. When we remember that, healing becomes possible in ways that seem like miracles, but are really just nature working the way it's supposed to." As the sun set behind the Wind River Mountains, painting the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jake reflected on everything that had changed since that terrifying afternoon when Red River had fallen to a rattlesnake's bite. He'd gained not just his bull's life, but a new understanding of healing, community, and the wisdom that could be found in unexpected places. Red River approached the group, drawn by the sound of voices and perhaps by some memory of the people who had saved his life. He nuzzled Lily's small hand with gentle affection, and she scratched behind his ears with the fearless confidence of someone who understood that healing created bonds that transcended species. "Thank you," Jake said to Tom and Lily, words that carried the weight of everything he couldn't fully express, "for teaching me that sometimes the best medicine comes from the oldest knowledge and the youngest healers." The bull who had nearly died from venom now stood strong in the evening light, a living testament to the power of keeping faith when hope seemed impossible, and to the healing that became possible when different kinds of knowledge worked together in service of life. This story reminds us that wisdom comes in many forms and from unexpected sources. Jake Suvan learned that healing often requires us to set aside our assumptions and remain open to knowledge that exists outside our familiar experience. Sometimes the most powerful medicine combines the best of old and new, traditional and modern, bringing together different ways of understanding the world in service of life and hope. Cowboy dropped to his knees. When his bull fell from a snake bite, until a child said, "I have a cure."